Just over a week until the big kickoff, and in the life of a Swindon Town fan, and indeed a football fan, it's a strange type of purgatory. None more so than for us, and for whom the off-season 2021-22 has been highly Swindony. As Town's season came to a heartbreaking end on that balmy night in Burslem, most Town fans look forward to nothing less than the steady pre-season of consolidation and investment at the county ground. I'm pretty sure none of us, not even Clem, foresaw the loss of first-team coach, assistant manager, the whirlwind of change that it promoted, and including the departure of director of football and a raft of first-teamers and fan favourites. So, with the new season approaching, there's a new man at the helm, Scott Lindsay, assisted by Jamie Day. We've also managed to protect the core of the squad. Quite the achievement reflecting on seasons past at the county ground. There's 13 new members and counting of the playing staff, a new technical director, and a fresh new culture of Moneyball is reportedly dictating the direction our club is now taking. It's been a mixed pre-season of results thus far. 2 wins, 2 defeats against non-league opposition, and it's pretty much split the fan opinion down the middle on the socials. Fitness versus finesse, encouragement versus embarrassment. The hysteria of pre-season, just on steroids in the case of Swindon Town. So how are you feeling about the new season in SM1? We're here tonight for all your calls. So make sure you hit that speaker request button, send us a DM, send us a tweet. But before we do that, I'm going to introduce you to the panel, including a very special guest, as you may well have noticed. Our special guest tonight is Town's giant custodian and all-round top bloke. He's made 17 appearances in a Town shirt to date, including a very busy 90 minutes, repelling the eventual Premier League champions Manchester City. Having established himself as our number one during the tail end of last season, esteemed listeners, I give you Lewis Ward. Lewis, good evening. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Delighted you're with us tonight, Lewis. I'll introduce you to the rest of the panel. Lewis, meet Joe Vincent. Joe Vincent, meet Lewis.
Evening, Lewis.
Hi, Joe. Nice to meet you.
Lewis, also joining us tonight is Max Springer. Max, meet Lewis. Lewis, meet Max.
Evening, Lewis. Nice to meet you, mate.
Hi, Max.
And finally, Lewis, I'll introduce you to Chris tonight. Chris Phillips. Chris, meet Lewis. Lewis, meet Chris.
Hi, Lewis. Nice to meet you.
Chris.
So, Lewis, thanks ever so much for joining us tonight, buddy. As we talked off air after the Woking game, the format is fairly straightforward tonight. We've got a whole host of questions that have already been sent in. Some of them specific to you, some of them more general Swindon Town based. And no doubt, as our time with you unfolds, I understand we've got a good sort of 45 minutes together tonight. But as the night unfolds, I'm sure there's going to be a few more that come in. And if we get the opportunity to get people on to ask them directly, we'll be doing that, or indeed we'll be reading those as we progress. How's that sound to you, buddy?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Not a problem.
Smashing. Well, look, Lewis, we'll crack on. First question that we had, it's an anonymous question actually, but I'm going to ask you a bit of an entree to this question. Lewis, when you joined the club, obviously it weren't that far previous that we'd become acquainted with you during a rather controversial win against your old club Exeter at the county ground. How did the move to Swindon come about?
Hello?
Oh,
Sorry.
Have we still got you, Lewis?
Hello? Lost you there, sorry.
That's all right, buddy. No problem at all. So, Lewis, I was just saying, obviously, not long before you eventually signed for Swindon Town, we had a very controversial win against your former club Exeter at the county ground. So how did your move against to Swindon come about in the first place?
Well, it was kind of a strange pre-season, really. I finished my time at Exeter. I had a little spell at Portsmouth as well. And I was in talks with the powers that be who were at the club last summer before the takeover. And I had everything sort of lined up and potentially was about to sign on the dotted line when the court case happened. So I was kind of thrown into kind of a bit of disarray regarding that, really. But luckily, everything happened, and I just stayed patient. I was training with a few other clubs, had a few other offers and contracts at other clubs, and I kind of stayed patient, and Swindon was the one that I kind of wanted to sign for.
What was the big draw, Lewis? Was it convenience, given that obviously you already had sort of experience? I'm guessing you had some roots in the West Country. What was the big draw of Swindon, apart from the obvious? We're Swindon Town.
Apart from the obvious, I had a conversation with Mildy, the goalie coach, in the off season, and he highlighted a lot of things that I liked, and I thought coming to Swindon to work under Mildy, I could develop as a goalie more than anything else. So kind of working with him and benefiting my game was kind of one of the reasons that I wanted to join.
Gotcha. Well, it leads us into the first question we've had. It is an anonymous one, Lewis, but I think it harps back to that game you'll remember at the county ground, particularly windy, where Owen Doyle supposedly scored on his return. But the question says, how much did you enjoy your first experience of the wind tunnel while at Exeter?
Well, it wasn't my first game at the county ground. I mean, the game before it, I didn't have the best of nights either. But that game, I think I was literally just trying to kick the ball out of play in the first half to try and start a goal kick. So there was a few times I had a goal kicks that would actually blown out for corners.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want when you're kicking a ball, when you're trying to kick it to the halfway line, that's actually blowing behind you. So, it was an experience, put it that way. And I thought, well, if I ever have that wind again, I'm definitely shooting if I'm at the other end.
So it was, because if I recall, Lewis, you had quite a late call up into that game, did you not? It was an injury to your sort of counterpart that you were vying for the number 1 shirt at Exeter with. Is that right? There was an injury in the warm up, or is a late call up for you into the game?
Yeah. So that game, I'd been out for 3 months. I broke my arm previously to that. It was sort of kind of one of the 5th or something game back. I was on the bench, and about 15 minutes before kickoff, or 25 minutes, I can't remember how long it was. It wasn't early in the warm up, but he said he'd tweaked something in his I think it was his oblique or something, and I got the shout 25 minutes before, and it was my first game back in 3.5, 4 months. So yeah, I think safe to say my quad was hanging off after that game.
Were you aware, Lewis, at the time? It was a huge game for us. Obviously, the return of Owen Doyle. Hopefully you'll remember there was an enormous crowd at the county ground that day, really vocal. Do you have any recollections, or did you sort of shut all that out, given you were on the other side of it all?
No, it was. I think it was quite a big game for everyone all round. I believe you guys were top and we were second, so we believed that we could have closed the gap in that time. And it was kind of a big game in the turning point of the season, because I think about a month later everything stopped for COVID. So it was one of those where we knew where we were in the league, and had we got a result there, it might have benefited us a bit more. But yeah, we knew it was one of my first proper experiences of the Swindon Town crowd, because the games that I played previously at the county ground, they were Tuesday nights, and it wasn't quite the same as a full pack top v second. So it was a good experience.
So moving us on, Max has got a question for you, Lewis.
Yeah, hi, Lewis. So looking back, well, I know it's hard to look back, going back to that Port Vale game, and one of the questions we got in was, you won't want to throw teammates under the bus, but how frustrating was it to save 2 penalties but still go on to lose the shootout?
Yeah. I mean,
because I suppose you think like if you save 2 out of 5, you got a good chance usually, haven't you?
Yeah, we had 2 penalties to win it, and you look at those stats. If you have 2 penalties to win a shootout, the odds should be in your favour. I've unfortunately been in that position before, where I've saved 2 penalties in a shootout in a playoff situation and still gone on to lose. But I was on the receiving end of taking a penalty and missing. So it's unfortunately a scenario that I'm actually all too familiar with. But saying that, I'm not gonna throw people under the bus. It's a high pressured situation. It's the hard work of 10, 11 months all the way through. And when it comes down to 3 moments in a game, it's hard to put down your season to those 3 moments, when there's other times previously where we could have maybe picked up results and changed things around, and we could have been in a different situation come the end of May.
Yeah, I think that's all about fine margins, especially in situations like we had last season, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Lewis, is there any particular game that you look back to last season and go, if only?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't play as many as I'd liked, but the games that I remember seeing, I think Colchester away was a big one. I think Colchester away was one of the biggest.
Yeah, I think as fans would be completely in that basket with you. We've got talking about. I mean, you mentioned not playing too many other games. Talking about the sort of the people you're vying for the sticks with. Chris has got a question for you, Lewis, in terms of the competition that you've got this year.
Actually, Lewis, just before how do you obviously with it came from the penalties. How do you mentally? How does it come when you come back in to cope with that?
Yeah, I mean, penalties are a lottery anyway, so you can go the right way. Say there's 5 penalties, you can go the right way 5 times and not get anywhere near any of them. So you can always hope for the best to save some. But I think for me over the off season, I was obviously you're disappointed we didn't get to Wembley because I think we could have beaten Mansfield. And I think we could have gone up, but I think for me it wasn't a case of worrying about the shootout. I was more focused on looking back at how I played in the 2 playoff games and looking at those kind of moments and seeing what I could have done better, what I did well, and trying to take the positives from that experience and use my now experience from last season into this season, as I'm going into this season as one of the senior members of the squad at 25, which is quite strange.
And another question is Jack Copland on the books of Town?
Mm-hmm. Who, sorry?
Jack Copland.
I'm not that I'm aware.
It's an interesting one, Lewis. I think there were some questions around sort of third choice goalies. Obviously, after Manny had left, Jack Copland is a name that was doing the rounds a couple of weeks ago as a young goalkeeper that's been picked up by a sort of local academy.
Right. Okay.
And amongst the fan base, there's this sort of swirl of debate as to whether or not he's like essentially the third keeper that's sort of obviously very, very important for goalkeeping training.
Of course,
but he's not somebody that you're aware that you're working with.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I don't know everyone's. It should be probably last names that I should be aware of. But we have a scholar called Jack, so he could be that person. But I don't know his last name, unfortunately.
Let's just say he is.
He could be.
Right, who we got next? Joe, I understand you've got a question.
I do. So obviously last season, a highlight of last season was the Man City game. Got a question here. How much of a career highlight was saving Gabriel Jesus' penalty? Did you know where he was going to hit it, or was it a complete guess? Like in your head, do you decide straight away where you're going, or?
No, it's. I don't want to give any trade secrets away, to be honest. But no, it's to be honest, the penalty save wasn't my favourite. It wasn't my favourite save in the night. And a lot of people always ask me, "Oh, you saved a penalty from Jesus," and I'm thinking, I saved a 35-yard screamer from Rodri. Like that for me was a highlight. Just tipping it onto the bar, and that for me was the save.
Lewis, sorry to interrupt. While you're answering, talking about the Rodri save, speaking as an ex-keeper myself, could you try and sort of help the listeners understand the force that was involved in Rodri's shot when you've got your hand behind it? What would that be comparable to?
I don't know. We can go down the local park and I can kick a few balls, but I still don't think I'd be able to kick it as hard as he did. Yeah, it's one of those. I think it's moving so fast, it doesn't actually need that much of a touch. And I was lucky enough to react to it, but it was one of those where it just needed the slightest of fingertips just to tip it, divert it, because it was moving so quickly.
It was a worldie. Let's face it. That save was a worldie.
But yeah, the Jesus penalty. It's always nice to save penalties, and I think that was just before Harry scored, so I think it kind of gave everyone a little bit of a lift and a boost. And I think looking back at the night, we could have done things differently, but at the end of the day, we stuck to our values of the way we played in the season. It just didn't happen for us.
It was respectable, wasn't it? I don't think we didn't get battered. So
no, I don't think we played badly. I think Man City, the goals they scored were very good. I think there was obviously the free kick I'm disappointed on because I was trying to line the wall up and they weren't listening to me. And I think if I had certain players different in the wall, they might have responded better to that. But that's not my place to say, and that's now changed. So we'll sort that out this season. But I think the goals that we did concede, they were they were good goals.
Did you think that, Cancelo's strike that, I thought it was in for about 30 seconds. When it's gone past you, are you thinking, oh, that's in?
I thought there's no way he's shooting on his left foot here, and suddenly it's just flew past me. And I thought, I've heard the net ripple here, but no one's cheering, but no one's like groaning. So I'm to be honest, I didn't have a clue what was going on. It flew past me so quick.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Lewis, you've got a question here, actually, from a Forest Green Rovers fan. He says, is there an art to saving penalties, Lewis? Because you seem quite good at it. Now, I appreciate you said you don't want to talk about trade secrets, but is there anything you could tell us?
No, I think it's one of those where it's you versus them. And for me, I've never felt pressured into saving a penalty. And even though you could say I've got quite a good record of saving them, it's not putting any more pressure on me to save them. I think might even put more pressure on players to score past me. I don't know, but I think the Forest Green one, it was kind of a phase where we played so well that day, and I didn't want to let the boys down. So it was kind of an adrenaline one that got me through that one, because I thought if we keep a clean sheet here today, it'd be a really good result for us. But yeah, no, I as I said, I don't really want to give too much away, but I'm not one of those that really likes to look at penalties before games. So it's kind of in the moment thing for me.
Gotcha. Max, I believe you got a question for Lewis.
Yeah, going again, staying on the Man City game, that a lot of the City fans actually spoke highly of you. Well, I live in Manchester and I know quite a few City fans up here, and they spoke highly of us and yourself. Did you enjoy the banter with the fans behind the goal, or was it just a case of you just wanted to stay focused through that game?
No, I think it was they were quite respectable fans, to be honest. They kind of understood the situation, and they knew that they're top of the Premier League, they're vying for Champions League, and they're one of the best teams in the world. So it was kind of an inevitable. If they did score, it wasn't a if, it was when. So they were quite respectful, and they did when I did make a save, they were quite cheering. They were cheering me on. So it was nice to hear and to give a little bit of support back. And when they asked me to wave, you obviously give them a little wave, and they appreciate it. So no, I don't mind having a little bit of banter with the fans like that.
No, I like that. Fair play.
Chris, I believe you got a question for Lewis.
Absolutely, Lewis. Obviously, during that game, we a lot of people criticised us for the way that we played out from the back, and was that something that you wanted to do? Or was it forced a bit on you? Is it something that you would have preferred to play it further down the pitch, or?
It wasn't forced upon us. It was we had ways of playing out. We had options higher up the pitch. In the time of the game, I thought our personnel higher up the pitch wouldn't have helped if I kicked it long. You look at their back four. I don't think our front three that night would have won a header. So I kind of thought in the moment of the game, playing shorter might have benefited us a bit more. Obviously, I could have kicked it long, but I thought the ball was going to come straight back anyway. So I thought if we could build a little bit of possession and a little bit of momentum from the back, I thought that was our best way of going forward. But obviously, hindsight's a wonderful thing. It didn't work, but we tried it against the best team in the world, and I think it did actually help us going forward.
Look, Lewis, similar to the conversation or the question that I asked you about the force of Rodri's shot, when you're sort of pitch level, was obviously we have a very different perspective set up in the stands. When you're pitch level, the pace at which Man City were moving the ball versus the pace of which a typical League Two teams move the ball, can you help us sort of understand how literally what that's doing to your head and your eyes while you're in the game?
It's difficult to describe, really. Obviously the pace, you can see all of it, but for us, I've got to focus on where the ball is, how deep the defenders are, where the strikers are running, and I've got to try and communicate to the defenders like where they are, how they're moving, I was getting tongue-tied, trying to speak to them, telling them where they are. They're just crossing over, switching over. The rotation was frightening. It was, to be fair, the boys did really well with it, and we coped as best as we could, but we tried. And yeah, you're trying to tell people they're on the left shoulder, right shoulder, and then they're just swapping over. I mean, yeah, as I said, their rotation was frightening, and yeah.
No, well, put it this way, Lewis, there were a lot of clubs other than Swindon Town letting a lot more goals than Swindon did against City that season. So, hey, listen, we certainly didn't disgrace ourselves. Joe, you've got a question for Lewis.
I do, and it's a question that I don't know what's the reference behind it. So, Hannahs, you might have to help us out here.
Oh, I know the reference behind this, Lewis, and I'm sure you probably do by now, given who coaches you.
So the question's come in. Has Mildy shared his Pompey nightmare experience with you?
His Pompey nightmare?
Yeah.
Lewis, I cannot believe that has not immediately sprung into one of Mildy's war stories.
I mean, so if it's this, well, it depends. I mean, he tells so many stories. It gets to the point in training where I have to tell, like, Mildy, like, stop talking. We're here to work. Like, come on. Like, you've talked enough. We've rested enough.
All right. How can I put this, Lewis? I'll sort of, if I take it step by step, then the penny might drop. It was live on Sky.
Yeah. I assumed it was this story. Yes.
How did he tell the story to you, Lewis?
He referred to it as his second debut because he claims that he came on as a striker in his first debut.
Yeah, that's a fair one.
Yeah, no. So he was like, yeah. So this is my second debut for the club, and he told us it was live on Sky, and yeah, it was probably a rated 12. I think the best way to describe it without getting too graphic. And
yes, it involved Robbie Pethick's studs and a rather uncomfortable position.
And I think afterwards, instead of going to the Goals on Sunday, it went on to Casualty, the show after. So yeah, it was one of those. Yeah, he has shared me that story with me. Yeah.
Ah, all right. Yeah, did it make you wince, though, being honest? And indeed, have you ever had a comparable injury, Lewis?
I don't think anyone will have a comparable injury to that. I think that's a freak, one-off, unfortunate incident. And to be honest, it could only happen to Mildy. So luckily, no. Touch wood, no. And yeah, hopefully, as I said, no.
We're all touching the wood right now for you, Lewis. Not literally, but Lewis, let's move on swiftly before I find myself in the midst of any other unfortunate euphemisms. Lewis, got a question for you in relation to your Reading roots. Lewis, have you ever taken off your shoes? The question asked to display your disliking of Swindon Town Football Club.
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, the occasional gym session, we get told to take our shoes off and do it barefoot, but I think that's scientific reasons more than show my dislike for the club. But no, I'm confused by that one.
Are you okay? So Reading have this rather unusual charm. I don't know whether it's a widespread thing at Reading. One of my co-hosts will maybe be able to help me out here, but they sing "Take your shoes off if you hate Swindon," and apparently they all take the shoes off and start waving their shoes in the air in the middle of the match.
I had a season ticket at Reading for, I don't know, 10 plus years, and I've never seen that happen. So that's either a new thing or a really old thing.
Was that because you fell asleep?
No.
Yeah, no, I think it is a relatively new thing, Lewis. I think it's something they've been doing for the last couple of years.
Okay, yeah. So I wouldn't have heard of it. No, no, I've never done that. I think that's a bit strange, to be honest. But you know,
we played Reading once in a pre-season game. Like, we haven't played them for like 10 years. So where does this new rivalry come from? They're trying to stir up.
I honestly have no idea. I mean, I think I come from obviously outside of Reading, and I came up through the academy, and we went to obviously the games on Saturdays, and it was that was the team we picked. It was our local team. But no, I have no idea why. I think Reading's one of those strange clubs that it has no rivalry right on its doorstep. I think it tries Wickham, it tries Oxford, and it's just one of those where it has no real rival battle, which is sad, because I think Swindon's that club that it has a few. It has Oxford, it has Forest Green, it has Bristol Rovers. It's got quite a few little derbies, and I think Reading it tries to create derbies out of nothing, which is unfortunate. But yeah.
Do you enjoy
So
derbies?
one of my housemates in uni was a Reading fan, and he said they had a thing with QPR. It was like he called it the Hoops Derby. I think he said that was the closest they had.
That is the closest thing, I think, and I think that's clutching at straws, to be honest. Because obviously QPR's London. You've got so many clubs in London. I don't think you can class that as even trying it down the M4 corridor, to be honest. But I don't know. It's strange that it has no derbies, which is unfortunate because everyone loves a derby match.
Well, we've used the word strange now about 5 times whilst discussing Reading, so I think we can just sort of like leave it there and just, Max, move us along.
Right, I'm not sure where this question's come from, but it says, how does it feel being so tall that you breathe different air to us normal folk? And do you have to kneel down to talk to Louis Reed?
No, I just pick Louis Reed up. Just sort of cradle him and just pick him up and speak to him.
Actually, on that, did your height play into becoming a goalkeeper, or were you always a goalkeeper coming up as a kid playing football? Or
I think it was a case of I was always the tallest in my team, but I think it was more of a case of how coordinated I was at running rather than being good at like goalkeeping and being tall, and then I got stuck in goal because I either couldn't kick it or I was just better at catching. So yeah, I think from an early age I was always in goal.
Okay.
Chris, you got a question for Lewis?
I have no question for you, Lewis, and this is actually one from one of our legends, Debs, who wants to know what is the name of the veggie vegan place that you go in Cirencester because it's bloody amazing.
The veggie vegan place. Not sure. Can't remember what it's called now.
Are you a veggie, Lewis? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm not. No. But I do like good food.
What's your signature dish, Lewis? Are you much of a chef?
No, I'm kind of a pasta chicken kind of guy. If I'm cooking, it's minced pasta, kind of Italian dishes. My girlfriend, she's a really good cook though. So if she's cooking, then I know we're having a good meal. But I don't mind making a pasta dish now and again. But I'm trying to think. It's either it could be. I'm trying to think. There's Tommy's Street Kitchen, which I go to, or Munch by Munch, and I can't remember which one's which. But they're both very good restaurants. I can't lie.
Lewis, Jay on Twitter is asking a question that most people get asked when in relation to Swindon Town on these kind of phone-ins. What's your favourite cheese?
Yeah, this is a strange question. I've had that in the players Q&A before, and I'm not sure where does it come from. What is the relevance of the cheese?
Well, listen, it's something that's been asked a very, very long time. Obviously, cheddar is not a million miles away from where we are, or rather where Swindon is. Bearing in mind I'm on the London-Kent border, so I'm not going to try and claim I'm over cheddar way. But it's just something that gets asked, Lewis. And inevitably, if I don't ask, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't.
No, of course, yeah. I was just curious of where it came from. I don't mind a slice of brie on a cracker now and again.
And is there another question I'm getting here in relation to food? This is also coming from Jay saying, is there anything that is completely off limits, as in from a dietary point of view at Swindon Town, anything that's been red-lined by the club?
I wouldn't say red-lined as the club, but obviously you have to be careful what you eat. The sports science team obviously want us to be in the best shape possible. So with the weather the way it is, we're hydration tests every day, so they know if we're drinking enough, and we weigh every morning when we go into training. So yeah, I think there's nothing being outlined as horrific. Everyone knows generally what they should and shouldn't eat, but everyone knows that you can and can't eat certain things when you're trying to play football at the top level.
Yeah, gotcha. Joe, you got a question?
I do. So obviously, I was going to say, the dressing room obviously has music banging before games and after games. I heard it firsthand at Woking. There was a few good tunes in there. the question here is, what songs are on your pre-match playlist?
What songs are in my pre-match playlist? Do you know what? I'm not one of those that I don't really mind what's on. I don't really mind which DJ's playing, whether it's someone with the slower, calmer music or someone that's with the upbeat and your eardrums are bleeding. So for me, I'm not really one. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not going to sit in the change room with headphones in. I'm more focused on getting outside. And to be fair, I don't mind listening to music in the stadiums. I quite like going to the different stadiums and hearing the different playlists from the crowds and whoever's running the playlists at the away games. They're always good to listen to.
Who are the DJs in the changing room? Sort of.
Harry's normally on the DJ.
I bet his music's dreadful, isn't it?
Do you know what? There are some good songs in there. When he starts playing some Spanish music that no one understands, like sometimes you just got to switch it off and tell him to change the song. But most of the time, to be fair to him, his songs aren't too bad. Reedy stepped up a few times. Reedy's isn't bad. And then if we've got a slow recovery session in the gym, I think Johnny Williams normally takes over. So yeah, there's a few in there with different playlists, and they've all got their specialist timings, let's say.
Lewis, here's a question from Darren. We seem to be very lucky to have a character like Johnny Williams in the dressing room. What is it about Johnny Williams that seems to make him so hugely popular amongst all the teams he plays for, including Wales? And that's from Darren on Twitter.
Johnny's just a top bloke. There's no way else to describe him. He's just a really good guy. He's down to earth. He's hardworking. He's respectful of everyone at the club, no matter who they are. So he's just an all-round good human being. There's no other way to describe him.
And well, on that basis, Lewis, without naming names, I genuinely do mean that. Don't name names. When you think back about your career, have you ever played with someone that you can honestly say was like the polar opposite of Johnny?
Yes.
So how it's an interesting one, because obviously you've all got to be in it together. Is it just a question with that kind of personality, when you cross the white line, is it you put all that to one side and even that type of personality just gets on with it? Or is it just something you have to kind of all tolerate? How does that work?
Yeah, there's limitations. There's tolerance, and tolerance only takes you so far. I think we're all trying to strive for the same thing, which helps. We all want the same goal at the end of the day, and we're looking for, as I said, like the end result is always the same. So when you cross the white line and the whistle goes, you put personal feelings aside, egos, and you're a team, and you work as hard as you can as a team. So it's one of those where tolerance will only take you so far, and if those lines get crossed, there will be consequences and it will fracture the team. But fortunately, we haven't come across that yet, and I haven't come across that in my playing career. So hopefully it won't happen. But if it does, then it'll be a learning experience for me and some other people.
So and also coming away from players, Lewis, obviously there's been sort of managerial changes at the club. One of the questions that we've got here relates to the gaffer and his change of role. Have you noticed any sort of subtleties in terms of Scott sort of having to change his position or change his approach? Now he's the head coach.
I think I worked with the gaffer previously at Forest Green, and I loved him there. And he was the assistant there, and obviously I was very lucky he was the assistant last season. But I think now the reins are in his hands, and he's got more control, and I think that will suit him a lot more. And I think it will benefit the club as well, seeing what he can fully offer to the table, which will be nice.
And if you could describe the gaffer in no more than 5 words to Swindon Town fans, Lewis, what 5 words would you choose?
That is tough. I'd go no nonsense. He's very good on his values. It's more about his non-negotiables really, and his values as sort of people and humans to try and get the best out of his players. I know that was a lot more than 5, but I think that's the only way to describe him.
No, we'll take those. Chris, I believe you've got a question that's just come in.
Well, I just wanted to ask you, Lewis. Obviously, early last season, for a lot of last season, you were basically the substitute goalkeeper. How do you cope with that? And then and then when it comes to when you come and play,
that is the toughest question, and that is such a horrible question to answer. There's no way to prepare for not playing. You can only train 100% every day and prepare like you are playing. And I think previously, when I was younger, I had loan spells where I didn't play, and I was playing every sort of 12 weeks. I was playing very inconsistently, and I didn't know how to deal with it then. And I think those experiences have benefited me massively. And now I'm a little bit older. I've played a few more games. I know how to prepare myself for those games when I haven't played for a while. I think having injuries has helped, being out for a few months and not playing, and then coming back and being thrown into it. I think having played with the games that I did last year, I think looking back, it was just the training and making sure that I was ready physically as much as anything else. And mentally, I spoke a lot with Mildy, and I spoke to a sports psychologist, and trying to deal with not playing. And that was really tough, because all you want to do as a player is play. So I think being able to show what I did when I was able to play was really good. And I think moving forward, hopefully, I won't have to have so many breaks in between games.
So when you had that, what was the relationship between you and Jojo?
What did it look like is the question I'm going to fire back, and then I'll tell you what it was like.
Oh, that's superb. It's well handled. Media trained.
No, no, that's not even me trying to deflect. I will answer the question. I'm just wondering what it looked like.
I'll tell you what, Lewis, it's interesting because, like I said, I didn't play. I mean, I played an half decent sort of amateur standard of football, but I've always stood behind the goals, with a couple of seasons exceptions when I've got involved corporately in football, and I've always studied the goalkeepers in their warm up and try to sort of, if I can, get those little reads and tells. You're someone I'd hate to play cards against, because you have got an incredible poker face. Like when you can see you are so focused, and annoyingly, so was Jojo. If you compare you two, for example, to Mildy when he was playing, he always came across as being so much more expressive. And previous goalkeepers, Frank Talia being another example, Fraser Digby, there were always things that I felt I could read. But you two guys were completely poker-faced and very, very focused. I think I'm politely trying to say that I think there was a very, very steely sort of driven competition between the two of you. It was hard to say whether or not you guys were friends away from the pitch, but goalkeepers typically tend to be. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, no, Jojo and I were good. I have no issues with Jojo, and I hope he has no issues with me. So, I think the only issue was that he was playing and I wasn't. So, we dealt with that in the best way we could, and Mildy was very good in that. We'd have group hugs in training, and we'd talk it out. So, when he was playing, I was respectful. I only wanted the best for him, as you do, because we're all in the same team and we want the same goals. So I think, yeah, as I said, we were both driven, and that was, I think, why we both played so well when we did play. I think it was tough for me to go knock on the manager's door when Jojo was playing, because he didn't really put the foot wrong. And he got all of his call-ups and he got all of his accolades at the end of the season, which is fully deserved, and he's got his move now. So hopefully this season, with him pushing on, I can step in. But yeah, there was no animosity between us, and I think we both handled each other playing in the best way that we could.
And how have you found sort of, obviously you're going to have fantastic competition this year, Lewis, with Sol Bryn, very highly rated at Middlesbrough. What have you seen from Sol so far? What's he bringing to the table?
Yeah, no, we've had good training sessions. He's played well in the games that he's played, and I think it will be a case of similar to last year. Whoever plays will be respectful, but we both know that if that person doesn't play well, then the other person's chomping at the bit to get in. And I think, as I said, that's why Jojo played so well last year, was because that he knew I was ready to step in at any moment. So it's not a case of playing fearfully, it's playing with confidence and playing with the fact that you have to play at your best, which in turn helps the team because the other person wants to play as well.
So Lewis, as a goalkeeper, and I mean, I'm going to ask you to sort of, if you can, speak for Sol here, albeit it's a difficult one. But do you prefer it when managers actually come out as a pro keeper, come out and say you're my number one this year, or do you prefer it when it's a level playing field and you're both just going at it hammer and tong?
I think there's different ways to go about it. I don't know if it depends, because if you're 35 and you've played 500 league games, if someone came up to you and said, I've got a 19-year-old, you're going to have to fight it out, and he's played 0 games, I think you'd be a little bit cheesed off. But I think if you are told it's a challenge, you've got to put your 100% effort in, you've got to train hard every day, you've got to do your best, and at the end of the day, if your best isn't good enough for the manager, then you've got to go away and work hard and prepare. So I think there's different ways to handle it. I think there's different ways, obviously, as I've said, to work about it and speak to goalies. But yeah, if it's a level playing field, then whoever grabs the shirt, grabs the shirt.
Max, I believe you got a question for Lewis.
Yeah, just going back through your spell at Portsmouth, and we had an infamous game during that season away where I don't know. Yeah, do you remember how our manager was acting on the night, and what was your thoughts and like the rest of the team of how he was acting on the touchline? Have you ever seen anything like that from a manager?
That's the first time I've come across him, and I'm told he's a really nice guy off the pitch. And I was baffled to see what I was seeing. It was baffling. Our bench was laughing. Like I felt bad for everyone sat on the Swindon bench, because everyone was sort of like pulling up their shirts and like rolling their eyes and sort of like hiding and cowering, because what we were seeing it didn't look professional. But it's one of those where if that's the way he is, that's the way he is. The things that I've seen of him, I don't like the way he acted on the bench in the Oldham game. I think it was just before the end of the season. I think it could have been handled better, and I think it's almost a case of childish, and he can't let things go. But as I said, I don't know him personally, but from what I've heard off the pitch he's really good. So maybe it's just one of those that when he's on the pitch and the adrenaline's going, he can't control it, and sometimes there's just no need for that. But yeah, as I said, that game was strange. But then on the flip side of that, we came to your place 3 weeks later and lost. So that is football, isn't it? So
no, I think they made it so much worse that season, because that was when obviously no crowds. But then I think at that point, the away commentary teams couldn't even channel in, so we heard everything that was being said on the stream, and just like,
yeah, it was bad, and you'd like to think that your manager would have a bit more respect for his players, but I don't know. That's again not for me to say, because I don't know him personally. I've never worked underneath him. I don't know. I'm sure the boys that played that season have their views, and I'm sure they might not be as diplomatic as I am.
I think you could tell from Dion's celebration when he scored the winner, right?
Yeah, I think that's as I said, actions maybe spoke louder than words that day. But there was a few scuffles on the bench that day as well, which were unnecessary and not needed. So I think it will always be a case of, if he comes back to the county ground, I don't think there will be any love lost between some of the players that are still here.
Hey, listen,
No, yeah.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, cream rises, calm as a bitch. League tables spoke volumes, I think, come the end of the year. And obviously, we feel sorry for the supporters of his football club, because they're a good football club. But but ultimately don't have a lot of sympathy for him, particularly given the actions as he left the pitch. And I think that's just speaking as a supporter. Lewis, you've obviously, I guess this. Appreciate we're sort of coming up to our sort of time limit with you tonight, but you've been involved in a few pre-season friendlies so far. So what is it you've seen, or how you've seen the sort of current squad sort of like unfolding, if you will, taking shape? What would you say to the Swindon fans we've got to look forward to this season based on what you've seen so far?
Yeah, it's as I said, it's a work in progress. We've got one more pre-season friendly this Saturday. I know there's 2 games on Saturday, but yeah, one more at the county ground before the season starts. I would say, I know it's a cliche, but trust the process. We're working hard every day. I think we've shown highlights and glimmers in every game that we've played, and I think Eastleigh was a test, and we played some really nice football in that game in the second half. We weren't up to speed in the first half, but the second half we were really good. We just couldn't find that finishing touch. But I think this season the Swindon fans should expect a lot of possession-based football, but a lot of possession with a purpose. There won't be so much playing around the back for no reason. It will be aggressive possession-based football. We want to play in their half on the front foot. We want to play around the edge of their box. We don't want to be passing out the back and playing 25, 35 passes to get over the halfway line. We want to be scoring within those passes. So I think the fans should be looking forward to aggressive possession-based football.
That sounds good enough for me, Lewis. Lewis, listen, we like to kind of wrap up, having had Paul Caddis on recently, we like to kind of wrap up by saying this to you. If you've got a question you might like to ask us as fans, football, player to fan, because it's usually always fan to player, and Caddis had about 50 once we asked him this question, but is there any one burning question you might have for us?
That's a tough one. Not really. I mean, it's difficult because obviously we don't interact as much as I would like, and I think we need to kind of bridge that gap a bit more. I think we spoke a bit about that after the Woking game, and I think we need to do a bit more of this kind of player interaction with the fans so that we can get more. But what I would pose is, what would the fans want to see from us? What would the fans like the club to do to bridge that gap to the fans? Allow the players to interact with fans like we're doing now, but how would the fans like that to come about? What would they like to see? What content would they like to see from the club?
Well, I think, listen, I mean, I'm sure all the guys will have a view on this. I think, so we kind of maybe take a pointer from each of us. But I mean, hey, listen, from on the pitch, I think it's just important that we see, 11 lads out on that pitch at any one given time that are clearly, sweating blood for the shirt. I think that's really important. And I know players all show that in very different ways, and characters are all very different. I think, I think a willingness to just essentially be out in the community, I think, is something that I look for. And it's an interesting one, Lewis, because I mentioned to you, I live over on the London-Kent border. So I don't actually get to spend a lot of my sort of week in and around sort of Wiltshire. But I guess I look at it like this. We're a club right at the heart of our own town. We're a community club. And we've always described ourselves as being a community club. So really, I just think players kind of proudly positioning themselves as part of the community, being in and around the community, engaging with the community, I think is key. And yeah, obviously we've got you on tonight, Lewis, and this has been refreshing because obviously it was a very different culture last year trying to speak with players. This really has been a breath of fresh air, and you've been very open and honest. I mean, Joe, is there anything from your point of view that you would say in answer to Lewis?
Not really. I mean, obviously, we've seen that the club have been really, really open towards us and different sort of fan groups, if you like. The amount of sort of, I don't know what the word is really, the access to the club that we all love, that we've had so far this season, and obviously moving into the full season next year, it's just mad. Like, for me, obviously, I've grown up sort of idolising the boys on the pitch playing red and white, and like at Woking, I'm standing there chatting away to Johnny Williams and Wardy as well. Like, it's been such a shift in sort of just attitude towards the fans, I think, already that we've seen. It's been fantastic. We've got obviously the live shows in the Legends Lounge coming up, with some players hopefully coming up and having a chat with us. I mean, yeah, just as a thank you to you, Wardy, for coming on for this. This is perfect. This is just something that, you know, I'm really grateful for, and I'm sure a lot of Swindon fans are grateful for as well.
How about you, Max? Have you? I mean, obviously, Max, you've got a sort of similar challenge to me, albeit you're even further away up in Manchester. But what is it you're looking for from Lewis and the boys?
Well, I think back to a few years ago in the Wellens, where in fact, I think it was during that first sort of lockdown where the club released the players to go on and do the podcast with Rich on Low Strangers. And I guess that sort of falls in similar to what you're doing with us. It's like, it's just nice to like have an open chat with you and be able to ask you these sorts of things. And it's just nice to have a chat and get to know the players better, because I think it makes us, it definitely for me at least, being so far away, obviously I can't get involved with the more in-person stuff that happens around the town, but it helps me connect with the club more. I think it definitely got me back when they were doing interviews a few years ago. I think I fell back in love with the club, and it's got me back on board with it fully ever since then. So it's like, I think we just appreciate being able to do things like this. Do you know what I mean?
And Chris, from your perspective, obviously you're again not a million miles away from Max, albeit, you know, a slightly different colour rose, but sort of Yorkshire based. Is there anything from your perspective we're missing?
Well, looking at it, while we're on there, you just want a striker, a fox in the box striker. I think that's all we want. And apart from that, I think our recruitment has been great, absolutely great.
So Lewis, from I mean, I hope that answers all your questions. Really, I mean, the one thing that I would say to you, Lewis, in sort of almost like to sort of finish this one off, really, is it's all very well and good us saying, oh, we love to be able to just walk up, talk to the players, this, that, and the other. Is there any kind of, you know, without me trying to position you as being a bit sort of, you guys as being a bit special and in your own bubble, there's obviously things that pro players can and can't say to fans when you're talking to them. Is there anything that you'd like to kind of put out there to the fan base to just say, look, obviously you're not being rude when you can't talk about these things, or you know, is there like, you know, I remember once, I mean, it's about 10, 12 years ago, seeing a fan sort of seeming to inadvertently rub a player up the wrong way when he was making his way into the stadium. You could see sort of getting himself in the zone, and it was affecting his preparation. He was being badgered so much. Is there anything you can do to help fans that might want to interact with you, sort of understand your position?
Yeah, I think the one question that kind of not gets on people's nerves, but going into the ground, is getting asked if you're playing today. Because that can affect people two ways. Because you obviously, if you're not playing and someone's asking, "Are you playing today? I can't wait to watch you play," and you're walking into the ground and you know you're on the bench, it's a frustrating one. And on the flip side of that, you don't want to let people know that you're playing too early, because obviously the teams aren't out, and it's one of those where you have to go, oh, you have to wait and see, and just stay patient for the team sheets. But yeah, I think that's kind of the one question that it can go either way. You can obviously give your answer and be diplomatic, but if you catch someone on a bad day, it can then rub people the wrong way.
So is it fair to say, Lewis, you've met the mighty football Phil, because you did everything but put a Wiltshire accent on that last question?
Yeah, I suppose so, yeah.
Very diplomatically put. Well, he's pretty much met everybody now. There are some absolutely brilliant stories about football Phil over the years. I would urge you, Lewis, to have a look at some of Cy Ferry's content from around sort of 2010 to 2012, some of his run-ins in the car park, and just sort of compare and contrast to some of the run-ins maybe you've had. But listen, Lewis, you've been a great sport tonight. I appreciate we've gone over your 45 minutes, mate, and we're really, really grateful. We say to everybody that comes on, please don't be a stranger, buddy. We've got a long season ahead. We'd love to hear from you as the season unfolds. I hope tonight's not been too arduous for you.
No, of course. Whenever you need someone, just let me know and I'll pop on. I'm happy to do it kind of once a month if you want me to, and we can have a catch up every month at the end of the month and review what's happened and stuff like that. So yeah, just let me know what you want. If the fans don't want me back, then that's fine and I won't come back on. But if they want me back on, I'll come back on.
Well, rubber stamp, right. We've got an exclusive. The ink is on the contract. congratulations, Lewis Ward. You will be our new monthly guest. More than happy with that, buddy.
Okay, perfect.
No, it's been an absolute treat, Lewis. Listen, Lewis, we are literally just going to go on, have a conversation about signings. We'll talk about management, talk about some fans' reaction that we've seen over the last few weeks, and a little bit of a friendlies roundup. You're more than welcome to stay on. You're more than welcome to listen in. You're more than welcome to disappear off and get your head down, buddy. We're just very, very grateful you joined us. So thank you ever so much.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I think we've got a triple session tomorrow, so I think I'll be asleep in 5 minutes if you don't mind.
Good for you, buddy. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, Swindon Town's current on paper, number one, and we wish you all the best for the new season, Lewis. And thank you for your endeavours in a Swindon shirt so far. Lewis Ward, ladies and gentlemen, Joe, Max, Chris. What do you make of Lewis? Absolutely outstanding contribution for his show debut.
Absolutely.
That
was fantastic. And now we've got
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
We've got a new member of the Tom Broadbent Lounge, so that's fun.
Yeah, it's official. Yeah, we're going to have to get him a shirt now, aren't we? Speaking of which, gentlemen, what a week it's been. We are official sellers of replica shirts. Can you believe it?
The shirts are amazing as well. Those shirts are amazing.
I want your best sleazy salesman routine, Chris. Let's hear it.
Hey, is Ollie on this call?
No, he's not on this call. But yeah, I mean, listen, don't know what to say really. I've been asked why we've gone down this route, so I've been asked to sort of explain it a little bit on the show. And I will. And there's a really nice sort of personal story tied in that it's interlaced with so many sort of Swindon legends from over the years, and also my own personal sort of, fandom of football and how I ended up becoming a Town fan. And weirdly, it all started off with Tottenham Hotspur back in 1986. I've mentioned 2 or 3 times tonight about living on the London-Kent border. For those of you that don't know, obviously the clue is in my personal bio. My family are all Tottenham Hotspur fans. Oh, blimey, Chris, do us a favour, mute yourself, son. Don't start falling into your pots and pans. But yes, so I started supporting Spurs as a kid. They were the club that my family supported. And essentially it was the 86-87 Tottenham team that had Hoddle, Ardiles, Paul Allen, Mickey Hazard, and then also the likes of Ray Clements, Richard Gough, etc. And they had that iconic white shirt with the chevrons going horizontally, and I fell in love with that shirt. It's one of the reasons why I got into football per se. But I got taken to my first Spurs game at White Hart Lane, and it was one of the most dreadful footballing experiences of my life. And a week or so later, I got took to my first Town game, and it was love at first sight. I can still name the team from back to front. I can tell you the result, blah blah blah, but I won't bore you. Cut a long story short. As the years unfolded, and obviously Ozzy Ardiles, Glenn Hoddle came into the club, a lot of the players that I've mentioned, Paul Allen obviously played for us, Mickey Hazard played for us, Ozzy played and managed, Glenn Hoddle played and managed. Tony Galvin was another player from that era that came from Spurs, and we developed a very, very similar sort of like footballing ethos, playing the Swindon way was very, very similar to Spurs. Anyway, cut long story short, fast forward to where we're at now. We launched this Tom Broadbent Lounge, and a few people have been talking to us about bringing out some merch. We've got some plans for further down the line. And I was like, well, look, why mess around with T-shirts when actually we can bring out a shirt which is exactly the same template as the template that got me involved in football way back when, which is what we've done. So obviously we couldn't go forward with our first kit being anything other than red, which is what we've done. So we've got the red with the horizontal chevrons. Obviously ties in nicely with our kit this year. Our away kit is the white kit, exactly the same template as what that Tottenham team had back then in 86, 87, but with our logos proudly presented. Third kit was an interesting selection for us because we started talking about our favourite moments supporting Swindon Town. And one of my real highlights, because it was just down the road from me as well where I live, was bashing Charlton in the playoffs. With the Stephen Darby penalty. So the choice of going for a blue and white Swindon shirt for our third shirt was a really, really obvious one. And the goalkeeper shirt, being a keeper myself, I'm a little bit of a goalkeeping purist. I'm big on goalkeepers wearing green. And we were given the opportunity to bring out a Tony Parks-esque green goalkeeper shirt with the horizontal chevron. So that was what we did. it's not a money maker for us at all, guys, but hopefully it is a money maker for the Swindon Town Community Foundation. So we're working with Ollie Town and Taylor, who's getting the shirts produced, printed, and he's also doing personalisation. But every penny of profit that we make, and hopefully you've seen from the prices, it is very, very keen. But every penny of profit that we make is going to the Swindon Town Community Foundation to then do with what they so choose. So please be sure it's not a money-making exercise. The Tom Broadbent Lounge per se is not something that we make money out of. We genuinely do it for the love. We do it because we adore our club, and we do it to try and enrich yours and indeed our fan experience. And producing those kits is very much along the lines as well. So if you can, please make the most of it. You will see us moving in and around the county ground wearing those shirts from time to time. Town and Taylor, Ollie is the chap to get in touch with. If you have a look down through my posts and through the Tom Broadbent Lounge posts on Instagram and on Twitter, you'll see those lovely shirts. If you'd like to have a look at them, drop me a line and I'll make sure that we furnish you. So, but the uptake has been fantastic. It's fair to say we're not going to just keep punting these out infinitum. They are limited edition. They are going to come off sale soon. So I'm not sure where we're at in terms of numbers versus or target numbers versus where we're at. I know we are getting close. So if you do want one, drop Ollie a line. Swinging back into the wonderful world of where Swindon Town are at now, however. And Max, I'll bring you in on this because it's been a while since we've had you on the show, buddy. But it's been an interesting pre-season, hasn't it? It's fair to say, I touched on it at the start with my introduction, about fan meltdown and whatnot. What do you think has been behind what feels like one of the most bizarre, sort of squidgy meltdown seasons I've experienced as a Swindon Town fan? How's it been for you up there?
It's been, obviously I can't watch the friendlies, but I've never been one who's bought into friendly results anyway. The summer that always jumps into mind is after the Millwall playoff loss. And I think we went on a run of 7 or 8 pre-season games where we were unbeaten. We beat Nottingham Forest at home and smashed them to pieces, and De Sevi got a brace in front of him. And then look what happened that season. And we've had other seasons where we've not had the best start in the pre-season, like the 1920 season. We go and win the league. So I don't think you can buy in too much. I think especially the start of pre-season, like the games we've seen so far, it's just about fitness and getting players in the right state, ready for playing a proper football game. It all starts on the 30th against Harrogate, right? So, and in terms of the signings, we've brought in a good number. I think the thing we were screaming out for last season was depth, right? And I think we've got that in droves, especially in the midfield. I'm really confident looking at our midfield, actually.
Yeah, our midfield has got absolutely buckets of depth, hasn't it? I was running through a spreadsheet that myself and my son just hurriedly put through today in readiness for the new season, and we allowed ourselves the benefit of having certain players representing more than one position. So, for example, I'll just use one name. We've got Mo Darbre is a little bit of a jack of all trades across the midfield. Darbre is a lad who, bizarrely, I don't live a million miles away from where the Valenti Academy is. And there are lads that I've coached at a junior level that were playing with Mo Darbre. And they've described Mo as being like a little Kante. And it was almost like his nickname when he was at Valenti. So Mo is a player that, for me, I've got down as a potential backup central defensive midfielder, albeit he's a little down the pecking order at the moment. But I've also got him as a wing back on either wing, based on what we've seen and conversations that have been had so far. But I think it's interesting, Max, on that front, because there has been a few players that we've brought in this year. I think the gaffer talked about players that have got flexibility to play more than one position. And certainly across our midfield, we've got that in an abundance, haven't we?
Yeah, especially in defensive midfield, because I think that's just what we were crying out for last year. If you look at the Vale games, I think we were missing. I know we had Jordan Lyden in the squad, who would have been the perfect sort of player, but more players like that who can really come in and give it a good fight in midfield, especially some of those Tuesday night games. I think back to like the Tranmere game, we were missing someone like that away. I think we've got that in midfield now. I think we've got a bit of everything in midfield, whether we want to take control of the game and really play the ball around and take it to 2 teams. But I also think, we have options like guys like Mo Darbre. Tom Clayton can play that position as well in defence midfield, where we can take control of the ball just by smashing them basically, or really giving a good press in the midfield. I think that's definitely going to be our strongest area, at least based on the squad we have at the moment. I think we probably still need a striker. Maybe if we're going to go with 5-3-2, I'd like to see maybe one more centre back in as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably going to be, one for you, Joe. I mean, Joe, you and I both did the all-coms for the Woking game. Max has brought up the subject of centre-backs. I mean, there were times, particularly early in that game, where we were I felt that we looked a little naive in places, and a little vulnerable at centre-back, and Sol Bryn's dug us out on a couple of occasions. But Angus MacDonald, I mean, that is an enormous signing. And when you put MacDonald down on paper and you start looking at the options that we've got centre-back, I mean, yeah, midfield's good, but centre-back, we are probably looking stronger at centre-back than I think I can remember us looking for many a season. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Angus MacDonald was it's a pants-off signing, isn't it? I think that's probably the best way to put it. It's almost, I know you mentioned in the group chat earlier in the week, Hannah, that it's sort of your Gordon Greer type signing, isn't it? I mean, there's rumours of him. He could be captain material, possibly. Obviously, who knows? But even if he's not a captain, he seems like a leader. I've been reading a lot of Rotherham fans' tweets this week. They're not over the moon that they've let him go. I just think for League Two, he's 29 years old, so technically he's sort of in his prime. But to me, that's a stupid signing at this level. It's just whether or not we can keep him fit, I guess, because obviously last year he struggled with injury, and then the year before, I think the year before, he played like 48 games for Rotherham in the Championship, so that's not too bad. And obviously he had his health problems beforehand as well. So, I mean, we've got a fantastic sports science department. If we can keep him sort of top of his fitness, what a signing that is. I mean, and even the other centre-backs we've got, I mean, we get him with Matthew Baldry. When we saw him at Woking, Hannah's, we were sat there and we were just discussing how much of a Rolls-Royce footballer he looked like at the back. He looked like a Ben Gladwin in defence, the way he was dribbling past players and bringing the ball out. So, I mean, obviously you're not going to get 50 games a season from Frenchie, but yeah, obviously we've got loads of players around there. You've got Kieran Brennan, who looks good, I thought. Kieran Harry's maybe, obviously, I don't think he had the best game, but again, he's done well where he's been beforehand. And then Tom Clayton, I mean, I've only just about got over that assist for Harry McCurdy from Tom Clayton, because that was sexual.
Yeah, and let's be clear about that assist as well, because we were having a little bit of banter with him and the gaffer after the game.
Yeah.
And we were, during the commentary, we described it as agricultural, which was completely out of order. It literally was Glenn Hoddle-esque, wasn't it? And the gaffer was keen to point out that Tom Clayton has absolutely got that in his locker, like the ability to hit those passes, like hit those channels, hit like essentially 40, 50-yard passes to feet. He's got that in an abundance. And his ability, I think the thing that really interests me about Clayton is his ability to step in and fill the role that Lewis Reed operates. Because, there were times last year where I just felt like poor Lewis, like, he was absolutely, I mean, it was almost like we needed him every minute of every game. And when Ryan East was asked to fill that role when Lou was missing through suspension, I mean, it was like an impossible task for him. But there's something about Tom Clayton that, again, I use that word Rolls Royce. He looked very, very composed on the ball, very, very comfortable moving the ball around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from what I've read as well, he's not actually a centre back naturally. I think he played a lot of his time at Liverpool in sort of number 6, potentially number 8 as well.
Yeah. I spoke to a mate who's a Liverpool fan. He said he's more of a defensive midfielder, but can play centre back. Yeah,
I mean, you could tell the way he was on the ball. He looked so comfortable. He said to us as well after the game that as soon as he's got that ball, his head started looking for Harry on the run, and he's been in the building probably less than 24 hours, and he knows that Harry's making that run. Yeah, I think out of all the signings, genuinely, I know Angus MacDonald's a fantastic signing. We're all really excited for Saidu Khan, but Tom Clayton, I think that's maybe my pick of the bunch at the minute.
Well, I think he was outstanding. I'll tell you the player that also really caught our eye, and there was a little slip towards the end of the game, which was, clearly nothing more, nothing less than a momentary lapse. But the physical stature of Harrison Minturn when he came on and replaced Matt Bowdry. I mean,
Yeah.
I was absolutely... So in many ways, Tom Clayton, his physicality reminded me of Harry Minturn last season. Harry Minturn this season just looks physically like a different beast altogether. Really big, really imposing. He's at that stage of life where he's going to be putting on, the man muscle, so to speak. But he also looked really composed on the ball, didn't he, Joe? He was very, very comfortable bringing the ball out the back. He had that same kind of dip of the shoulder that Matt Bowdry had. And he, in terms of someone that was started like bringing the ball out the back and starting attacks from the back. I mean, Minturn is going to be. It's going to be hard work for him forcing. I don't think anyone's got him down as a starter. It's going to be hard work for him forcing his way ahead of the likes of Kieran Harris, etc.
It is, yeah. I think as well. Obviously, he dropped in, as you say, for Frenchie, and he was in the middle of the back three, which I think is quite a vulnerable position when you're playing a 3-5-2, because essentially, if you're giving the ball away, then you're leaving the keeper on his sort of haunches, aren't you? But yeah, he looked super confident on the ball. He looked, as you say, he looked built. And we all love an academy graduate, don't we? Coming through, someone the fans can latch onto. I thought a lot of the academy boys looked good. I mean, Anton Dvorak, he caught my eye in that game. I'm not too sure how much of an involvement he's going to have this year, but he looked very, very talented. It's the first time I've seen him play, I think.
Well, there's been a lot of talk on Dvorak, hasn't there?
Yeah. I mean, Reading lad, brilliantly. He came on the show at the end of the game, seemed to enjoy his kind of media debut, as I think it was. For a lad that was so young, he was really, really effervescent as a character. Very bubbly, very, very confident. He obviously nearly scored, forced a great save from the Woking keeper. You got to remember that Woking had a lot of Football League experience in that lineup, and our second half lineup had a lot of youngsters in it. But one other youngster I'm going to mention as well, before we move on too far away from the back line, was 16-year-old Sonny Hart. Now, Sonny Hart was only just turned 16, and it's fair to say, Joe, we were gobsmacked what a unit Sonny Hart was. And it was only after the game that I found out he'd literally just turned 16. But he looked very, very comfortable playing on the right of a back three, didn't he?
He did, yeah. He was, when he came on, we were sat there for 10 minutes calling him a trialist, because we thought he must be some trialist that's come in with at least National League experience. He fit right in. And yeah, I speaking to him after the game as well. He genuinely, I think he's taller than me, which is a bit disconcerting. But yeah, he does not look 16 years old, does he? And also not even just physical thing. He also looked like he could play a bit of football. So
yeah, he absolutely did. And there was, it was interesting because we'd heard some people mentioning, previous sort of, investors at the club that had family members playing for the club. Obviously, Adam Hart is the chap that is responsible for a lot of the fitness and conditioning at Swindon Town Football Club. And I've heard murmurs that apparently Sonny is all part of that swirl and so on and so forth. But I've got to tell you, whether he is or he isn't, I certainly, if we've got a 16-year-old that's coming on and imposing himself against National League attackers in the way that he did, then the future's bright. But certainly interesting academy graduate. On the right hand side, I tell you who else caught our eye was George Calmedo. So he was another one, Joe, that we commented on that physically had really filled out. So he again seems to be putting on his man muscles. I don't know whether he is quite ready in terms of sort of going to be pushing for a place in our first team this year, because he's also going to be up against the likes of Romeo Hutton. He's going to be up against the likes of Tyree Shade. And there are other players that equally are going to be, vying for a position down the right-hand side. But Calmedo had a lovely touch on the run, didn't he? And certainly showed loads of attacking intent. Do you think that Calmedo, Joe, is going to be one of those lads that we should be looking to get out on loan fairly quickly? Or did you see enough against Woking to suggest that he'll be in and around the first team squad this year?
I think he certainly can be. He showed a lot of, like I say, attacking endeavour. I'm not too sure where he sort of played previously, but I'm fairly sure it's not a right wing back. He looked very sort of controlled on the ball. Probably not a lot in the way of defensive sort of mindset, which is absolutely fine. You know, if we want to see attacking play, we want to see attacking football. But I think, yeah, you mentioned it, sending them out on loan to your Chippenhams or maybe a Supermarine or something just to play against men regularly, it can have wonders. If you look at sort of what happened with Ricky Aguiar last year, he left a boy and came back a man, didn't he? So I think as well, it's the mindset of I'm playing against lads here that are twice my size. If I'm taking too long on the ball, I'm going to get crunched. I think it's a good sort of work experience. So I think in my mind, he's probably one of the ones that you want to see out on loan, at least for the first part of the season. If he's not, then obviously stick around the squad. You've got the Papa John's trophy. I'm sure there'll be opportunities for the young lads to have a run out. But yeah, he does look very promising. He looks very good.
Well, okay, so listen, Max, I'll bring you back in here, and I'm hopeful that we're going to get a few listeners willing to come in and contribute, because none of us were obviously present at the Eastleigh game, and unfortunately I missed Supermarine and Melksham as well. And I appreciate Melksham was almost like a bit of a tune-up for us, even going into our pre-season games. But as we move into the three central midfielders, this for me is a really, really hot topic for debate. And please do, guys, see if you're interested in joining in. Please do send us your speaker request, because I'm really, really keen to get people's thoughts on who you think should be our starting three central midfielders going into the new season. Because so obviously myself and Joe commented long and hard on Johnny Williams, Louis Reed and Ben Gladwin as our midfield three. But since the Woking game, we've got Sadio Khan that's been added to the mix. Obviously, we've talked about Clayton being, very much part of the mix. We've now introduced Ronan Darcy, who came on against Woking. We've got Ricky Aguiar, who's part of this mix. We've got Ellis Iandolo. We talked about Anton Dvorak, who's another, again, youngster that came in. I think we all know that Jordan Lydon is probably not going to be in with a shout until October at very, very least. But certainly really, really keen to get any of your hot takes on who you would start with. And in fact, Charlie's joined us. Charlie, good evening. Do you want to give us your sort of hot takes, mate, on who you go with for your starting three? No, Charlie's clearly dropped off. Max, who will you go with for your starting three? We'll try and see if we can get Charlie back on. But if you've got Johnny Williams, Louis Reed, Ben Gladwin, is that who you're going with? Or have you got alternative thoughts? Because we've obviously the Gambian is now in town. As he so delightfully announced himself on socials. Ronan Darcy looks almost like a like-for-like Jack Payne replacement. Who are you going with?
I feel for Scott Lindsay, because he must have such a headache of you think that first game against Harrogate, who's he going to pick? For me, I'm a big Ellis fan. I think I'd have Ellis and Reedy with Johnny Williams in a bit more of an advanced position. I think that's the sort of lineup I go with.
That's interesting, because you know what? The gaffer said this week that Ben Gladwin's lost came back 5 kilos lighter at the start of pre-season. And Joe and I both said just how much more attacking intent Ben Gladwin showed. Now, again, I don't want to just keep on making this sound like the Woking show. But, the gaffer is saying that he is looking for Ben Gladwin to kind of like grab games by the scruff of the neck and really drive on. And I think one of the sort of reasons Ben Gladwin got a lot of stick last year was he did seem to be a little bit more pedestrian, as in he would take up a position, they get the ball into him, and Ben would be looking to hit those passes as opposed to get on the ball and drive forward in a sort of Jack Payne-esque fashion. But I mean, Ben Gladwin's strike against Woking was top.
Yeah. I did enjoy watching that.
Yeah, absolute top class. But you'd still go with Ellis over Ben, would you, Max? What's you thinking?
I just think Ellis just does such a solid job in midfield. I think every time I've watched him play in midfield, I don't think he's put a foot wrong. I don't see him as a left back. I think he's the guy you go with because of how reliable he was last season, especially. I think he was one of our top performers towards the end of the season. I think he's earned his place in that team. But then I think the thing we've got now is that, that might be what we start with, but we've got so many good options that, you could put Gladwin in that advanced position easily, rotating around with Williams, or you could put Khan sounds like that sort of midfielder as well. It sounds like Tom Clayton can play the sort of deep lying midfield role as well. I think the good thing is we have so many options, especially when the fixtures get packed, that we're not going to have to worry about midfield at all. It's a good problem to have, right? I know that's the cliche, but
No, I think it's a wonderful problem to have, and I'm going to ask Dean to tell us what he's going to do about the problem. Good evening, Dean. How are you? Oh, come on, Dean. Don't let me down. Unmute that mic, mate, and give me your introductions, because I know you're a massive Ben Gladwin fan. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, good, thanks. How you doing? You good?
Yeah, very good, thanks. So we were just talking about the fact that the gaffer has given us, he's given himself a headache, hasn't he? Let's be totally frank. But what a good headache for us to have. I think the biggest headache is going to be trying to keep all those midfielders happy this year. But who? I mean, on the assumption we're lining up as a 3-5-2, who's your three that you're going for in the middle?
I'm going Reed, Khan. I would have Khan. I think midfield last year we were so slow at times. I think that's what caught us out in a lot of games. I think he offers a little bit getting up and down, doesn't he? He offers that bit of pace. But that third one could be Williams, or if we don't get a striker in before that game, you could play Williams a bit further forward. So, I don't know, play Williams off of McCurdy possibly for that first game. I don't know. But yeah, I would definitely, my three would be Reed, Khan and Williams would be my first choice for three. I think we need to remember last year as well, Williams and Gladwin for the first half of the season were effectively one player, weren't they? The way that they were rotated a lot, and it was just one player, and I think that worked wonders. And it's no coincidence that when we started playing Gladwin a bit more, he was out injured for a while. So I think just need to go careful with him.
I think you're bang on, mate. As you say, there was almost like the shift change, wasn't there, at 70 minutes? You know, Johnny would come off or Ben would come off and Johnny would go on or Ben. Now, but it seemed, obviously, as the season went on, Johnny got more and more and more minutes. As you say, similarly with Ben, the more minutes he got, obviously, it then led to a bit of a breakdown. But, however, going back to what the gaffer was saying, you know, coming back into pre-season 5 kilos lighter, and now, obviously, with all that pre-season under his belt, I mean, it's exciting times, isn't it? I mean, it's down to Johnny Williams and Ben Gladwin, isn't it? You know, they've certainly got more than enough quality to be League Two central midfielders. You know,
definitely. I worry about it defensively. You know, I know it's a bit boring, but I do think that's what cost us a lot last year. You know, if you play those three in the middle, it's very, very slow. It's not as in getting back, and I do think that caught us out a lot last year. I wouldn't be surprised to see a home and away midfield, if I'm honest with you. I wouldn't, you know, him changing it up, you know, home and away for certain games, which we didn't really do a lot last year. So yeah, it's a tough one.
So, all right. So, Khan's a really interesting one, Dean. Did you make it down to Eastleigh? Have you got any intel yourself? Because all I've got really is the whisperings of some Maidstone fans, but I'm told at Chesterfield that his game really came on. Is there anything other than just the social media chatter about Khan that sort of led to you selecting him, or do you know something we don't?
No, not really. I'm a bit of a football geek. I'm a bit of a stats geek myself, and I do look at that sort of stuff. And you know, he's someone who I do like. I've heard a lot about him over the last 12 months. I've got to be honest with you. He's very, very well thought of, wasn't he? And it's universally liked really amongst Chesterfield fans. So it's quite hard to find that in football these days. Usually, as soon as the player goes, you know, we've seen that ourselves, haven't we, this season? Everyone's awful all of a sudden the minute they've left us. So, you know, to get quite the following that he has, and the clips that I have seen, he looks strong. He looks a lot more mobile than our midfielders were last year, for example. You know, I thought when Ricky came in, actually, at the beginning, he offered us something really different, looked brilliant, but I think we could see that a non-professional pre-season, shall we say, last summer probably caught up with him. So I think he may be one who breaks through, actually, but that's just my opinion. I'm usually wrong on that, but I just think he looked I think he could be the one to look out for by the end of the season.
I mean, Ricky's bulked out as well, wasn't he, Hannah's?
Oh,
Yeah.
mentioned.
I really, really think he has. Now, interesting, I was derided by Harry McCurdy for suggesting as much at the back end of last season because I felt, and it could have just been a confidence thing, that maybe he's playing with his chest puffed out and a little bit more swagger. But I felt that when he came back from Chippenham, he looked like physically a different specimen altogether. But, McCurdy was absolutely of the opinion that I was talking nonsense, and that it wasn't anything to do with hitting the gym or bulking up.
That surprises me. He disagreed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, he had a very, very strong opinion on it. But, nonetheless, when obviously it was apparent that Jack Payne was highly likely to be exiting the building, for me, it was like, well, the replacement is already through the door. We've got, Ricky Aguiar showed me last season loads of, attacking intent. I mean, he had that lovely little peak, didn't he? Notched a couple of goals. Looked really, really capable. But as you say, I kind of felt that, by the time he sort of came out the team, he almost needed that break. Like, it was
He ran out of steam.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, I mean, it's interesting. Now, we've not even talked about Ronan Darcy yet. I mean, I got my first glimpse of Darcy against Woking. Obviously he's had minutes throughout pre-season. Have you been to any of the pre-season games, Dean? Is there anything that you've seen from Ronan Darcy?
I've not seen nothing of Darcy, to be honest. Again, I've not got any opinion of him. I have to be honest, because I've only seen social media, so I wouldn't be doing him any justice if I did. But nah, I've not seen much of the pre-season. I've been far too busy with summer holidays myself this year. So for once, you're allowed to go. So it's been like I say, I've not really caught. I've seen highlights and things like that, and there's some people's opinions that you read and some people you don't. I think he'll certainly be a good. I think the best way to look at it is our bench this year is going to be brilliant. I look at Port Vale and I think what cost us. We wasn't even in a position to rest Louis Barry, for example. I think he would have been ideal in the second leg to bring on from the bench, for example, when we were chasing that winner. Yep. And we just didn't have that. And looking at it already this season, we've got 3 more loans we can get in. If we're up and around it in January, we're going to be in a good position to bring up a couple of impact players on loan. Or, I just think that we look stronger already all around the pitch. Might not be in terms of the quality of player, but I think the squad, looks a lot stronger already.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what I really like, and we've not talked about this yet. I mean, we've still got obviously strikers to talk about, but there is a certain kind of feeling that the sort of players that we are bringing into our football club have all got big points to prove, or that they're coming back from something which is really, really, really tough. And I mean, we touched on, and it's not really for us to dip too far into Angus MacDonald's sort of personal story. It's out there in the public domain. Obviously, Angus has had some health and some injury issues, and he's overcome those. And he's back. He was back playing at the tail end of last season, and the fans of the clubs that he's playing for are very, very sad to see him go. But again, I mean, to confirm that Angus has been captain of more than one of his previous clubs further up the leagues, Barnsley being one of them, and I believe he wore the armband either for Hull or Rotherham. So Angus coming in is a very, very exciting signing. Sadio Khan's story, I think, is fascinating. He's obviously his roots are from the Gambia. He's had a whole host of interesting kind of, once his family kind of settled in the UK, a whole host of interesting jobs and clubs that he's represented. He's really had to graft his way up through the kind of, the non-league game before he's got his chance at Chesterfield, still non-league. And now he's got his big chance. I mean, he's certainly proved himself to the Chesterfield fans as being capable of carrying them back into the Football League. And now he's got his chance at Swindon Town. And, you've got other players. Ronan Darcy's a fascinating example. A lad that when Bolton were going through their troubles and they were blooding 15, 16-year-olds in the first team, Ronan Darcy was seen as being one of the lads that was really, was going to sort of really light things up, and then seemed to lose his way a little bit, sort of didn't necessarily kind of, figure in the manager's plans, and has ended up playing his football out in Norway. And Ronan Darcy's come back with a twinkle in his eye and with a point to prove that, he's good to go at this level. But we, talk about Ben Gladwin and his injuries. He's come back. Clearly, he feels that he's coming back with a point to prove. He's 5 kilos lighter. It's going to be interesting to see what Johnny Williams has got in the tank coming into this season after a full pre-season. I mean, I could just keep going and going and going. I'm really, really hoping that that Jordan Lydon in October is going to be in a similar position, because I think we've not spent any time talking about him. But I mean, Max, I'll get your view on Jordan Lydon. I think we're all of the similar opinion, are we not? That if Jordan Lydon is fit in October, he's not only one of our best midfielders, but he's one of the division's best midfielders, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. If he can stay fit, that's obviously the question. That he seems to be getting injuries. It's different injuries every time. But yeah, once he's in the team, he's the perfect midfielder to have. Again, he gives you a lot of options of what sort of role you want him to play, right? So, and it's just another option. One thing we haven't actually touched on with that is that we are going to 5 substitutes this season. So I think that probably helps with having the depth. Is now we can get more minutes into some of these depth players that normally wouldn't get as many minutes, but we're also going to save the legs of a lot of players. I think also that we're going to lose Johnny Williams for possibly a month when he goes away to the World Cup, and he's obviously going to have other international breaks before then. So,
well, James Burgoyne will have we're likely to lose him for pretty much the entire of the back end of the year, because Wales probably will. So yeah. But it's a very, very good point, Max, because we've not even mentioned, obviously, the World Cup. Now, obviously, we don't have to worry about Jojo anymore. But Johnny actually disappearing is a big bit, because obviously one of our real key players. So you need that depth in that midfield, don't you? So, all right, let's devil's advocate. Johnny goes off to the World Cup. Who do you slot straight in there, Max?
I think that's where Khan probably goes in, right? If he's playing that more advanced role, I think it's going to be a mixture of Khan and Gladwin that would sort of fill that role.
Yeah, I'll make you right. I think the other thing that's really exciting, I mean, the gaffer's been asked about a plan B. I think the interesting thing about our midfielders, and you start thinking about a plan B, or players that can play in multiple positions. I can see Johnny playing on the wide of a front three. I can actually see Ellis playing on the wide of a front three. I thought that
definitely, yeah. Ellis on the left wing, I think, is an option there.
100%. I think Ellis's forward play, ball at the feet. I think Ellis is one of the best dribblers at the club. Speaking from a fan's point of view, I don't know whether I've not seen enough of Ronan Darcy, but the Bolton fans that I've spoken to have talked about his attacking ability. So again, is Ronan Darcy an option if you switch to a front three, playing as a right winger? I think that's really exciting. So I've
heard nothing but good things about Ronan Darcy from Bolton fans up here.
Oh, I mean, he's and interestingly, he's already sort of made an impression behind the scenes. So I think most people have seen his interview, where there's a real twinkle in his eye. I mean, he's absolutely determined to do the business at Swindon Town, but there's a real twinkle in his eye, and he just can't wait to get going. And he wants to get on the ball, and he wants to make things happen. He's saying all the things that we as fans want to hear from like an attacking player, So I think Ronan Darcy is a very exciting player. But again, here we are. Like we're talking about all these players. We're not even talking about Ricky Aguiar. Now, Ricky Aguiar was interesting because I think it was Supermarine. Aguiar was wearing a captain's armband, was he not? Or was it Melksham?
I think it was a Melksham game he was, yeah.
So he's right up there in the manager's thoughts. Right up there. So, God, it's super exciting. But look, okay, so we talk. Well, I mean, we can literally keep talking and talking and talking. The only other thing that I do think we haven't mentioned Reece Devine at all. Now, Reece Devine, obviously, I think it was Dean mentioned that obviously when players leave their clubs, when Dean was talking about Khan, players leave their clubs and people are always willing to put the boot in, and they weren't really doing that against Khan. But certainly, I've seen obviously we've all seen the Rovers fans doing that to Kean Harris and so forth. And certainly Walsall fans weren't backwards in coming forwards, putting the boot in on Reece Devine. But what I've seen of Reece Devine in pre-season is exactly what he told us he delivers, which is, I think he described himself, Joe, as an engine, didn't he? And he was up and down that left-hand side. It was absolute dynamite, wasn't he?
He did, yeah, he was. He was really good. Like I say, I think we briefly mentioned earlier in the show about a striker coming in. I think maybe a left wing back just as a cover for Reece. But I mean, I saw a lot of Walsall fans sort of almost giving it large that we signed him because they didn't particularly rate him. But I'm not being funny. You're not at Man United for over 10 years, like consistently starting in the 18s, 23s, if you haven't got a bit about you. And I'm not saying Walsall don't play very good football, but he's come to a side now that's going to be possession-based. I think no matter what you think about Man United, I'm sure their academies probably play a style of football that's probably possession-based attacking football, I'd assume.
Yeah, but I mean, with the best,
Yeah, and he's 20. He's only 20 as well. Like, you think how
exactly.
much development he's got ahead of him.
He's
yeah,
so up for it as well. You can tell he's so up for this move, and I think he genuinely believes that this is his time to really break through as a professional footballer.
that with the best will in the world, like, you know, Walsall fans need to get back in their box a little bit, because I'm not going to be digging Reece Devine out off the back of what he delivered at Walsall last season when they were deploying the three centre backs that, you know, in the manner that they were. I mean, their three centre backs are so bad that they've signed a 40-year-old centre back this season to step in and try and restore some order. So to say that Reece Devine is going to have been a little bit overexposed last year, I mean, we can't have proved that anyway when we've absolutely ripped him to pieces, haven't we? But I think one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up Reece Devine was it. One of the concerns for me in that left wing back position at the moment, unless we bring someone else in, is that it kind of means that Ellis Iandolo, again, continues to be, with so much competition down the middle of the park, if Ellis can't get himself sort of like stamped on as one of the automatic starters in the central midfield, and I might hasten to add, based on some of the performances I saw last season, he absolutely should. I don't really want to be seeing Ellis Iandolo being deployed as a left wing back again. Dean, do you? I'll get your take on this. I love Ellis as a player. I love Ellis as an attacking player. I'm not Ellis's biggest fan as a left wing back, and I really don't like the idea of Ellis because he's kind of got that flexibility in the tank. It's almost like, I can just imagine the conversation. Well, Ellis can slot in there, but he's not the answer, is he?
No, I don't think he is, and you know that's not any slight on him as a player as such. I just don't think he is a left wing back. I do think it's worth noting though. I'm not too sure, but I think if I remember rightly, I liked him last year. Tyrese Shade was best for Walsall last year at the left wing back. They absolutely raved about him as a left wing back. So I wouldn't be surprised if we seen him go to left wing back with is it Hutton, a right wing back. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we see happening sooner or later. It's a lot more physical, a lot more height at the back and athleticism. So that's what I can see happening. And Devine actually being on the bench, which I don't know where that leaves Ellis, which was your question, wasn't it? But I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen, based on what Walsall fans said about him last season.
Well, do you know what? Tyrese Shade's an interesting one. I think I've mentioned to a few folk that I have had conversations with people that have been involved in Tyrese Shade's career, and they were sort of saying one of the things that has kind of maybe held him back so far is similar to Ellis. He's almost like although he was Leicester's player, he's kind of like Warsaw's version of Ellis in that he's got flexibility, he can play in a range of positions, that he ends up being a jack of all trades, master of none kind of character. And I think, certainly when I was talking to these people ahead of his move to Swindon, they were of the opinion that he just, he should have been Warsaw's star turn last year. And that, as you say, he kind of found that position, sort of made it his own. It's going to be I want us to get the best out of that lad, because I'll tell you what, against Woking, I mean, he's very, very powerful. Quick. He's got one of those strides, Dean, that when he's running with the ball, it doesn't look like he's actually going very quick. A little bit like Gladwin, if you know what I mean. Like he can, if you think of the Ben Gladwin of old, he'd be striding across the pitch. You think he's not moving very quick just because he's got that ungainly stride. Tyrese Shade reminded me a little bit of that.
I thought he was very good, even though it was a bit of a nothing game at the end. But Walsall away, the last game of the season, obviously he was right in front of us on the left wing, and I've been banging the drum all last season. Actually, I did want to sign him. It was a bit of a strange one when it happened because I was really impressed with him. Even when we hammered them at home, I thought, but even there, you're right. They moved him into centre midfield that game. So he is very versatile. But I can see, like I say, I just got a feeling he's going to be, by the end of the month, the first 4 or 5 games, that'll be his position at left wing back. So that more or less goes back to the point that I wanted a left wing back, but when I looked at it, I think we've probably got 3 there now, so maybe we don't need to go and get one. We've also got 3 who can do the job. I'd rather not.
Was a striker, wasn't he, when he was brought into Walsall? He played a striker for Leicester's youth teams.
That's it, yeah.
I'm looking on his transfer market page, and he's played every position bar centre back in his career at some point. So
yeah, it's very versatile. So not too bad an option to have at left wing back. But going back to what you said about Ellis, But it's a bit of a tricky one because, again, it goes back to the pace thing. I just really think that you could see the silly free kicks that we were giving away last season, stemmed from the midfielders, tracking back, the amount of times we saw them pulling a shirt back, or, the frustrating free kicks that we've seen all last season, all come down to, players running straight past them. And I hope that's not what we see again this season, and do a lot of good signings, I think. A lot of good work.
Yeah, well, I make you right. Well, listen, I mean, like I said, what a wonderful. I mean, we've literally been speaking for the best part of 40 minutes there, I would say, just talking about the embarrassment of riches that we've got across our midfield. And I mean, listen, as we progress on to this forward line, okay, so listen, I'm looking at a list of players here that's we have 5 strikers in the building at the moment. And that's not including, obviously, the flexibility of Shade playing up front, or any, an Ellis being, deployed as a left winger. But I'm looking at Jacob Wakeling, Oscar Massey, Harry Parsons, Tommy Adeloye, and Harry McCurdy. Now, I know everyone's going to be thinking that those 5 are crying out for a big, experienced number 9 to come in and play alongside them. Now, I am reliably informed by Ayr United fans that Tommy Adeloye can play as a number 9. Now, I can't comment. I've seen the same highlights reel you guys have had. He looks half decent with his back to goal. I've not, obviously, I don't believe, again, please someone correct me if Tommy made his sort of unofficial town debut, if you will, uncompetitive town debut. I don't believe he played against Eastleigh because I think we're still waiting for international clearance. But I'm told he's a big, bustling centre forward. And the way that he was described to me was akin to the way that Tyree Simpson was described to me when Ipswich fans, a few of whom I went to university with, were telling me about Tyree Simpson. So interesting. I mean, Harry Parsons is somebody that, could potentially play the number 9 position. But I mean, Joe, we should probably spend a bit of time talking about what we saw. Again, we're going to be talking about Woking. And again, I'm sorry for anyone that went to Eastleigh, but obviously, they started with Wakeling and McCurdy, I believe, against Eastleigh. What we saw was what I'm told people that went to Eastleigh saw. Loads of hustle and bustle from Wakeling, like literally playing off the shoulders, pressing non-stop. McCurdy, very, very busy. I mean, we were both of the opinion that those two worked very well together in a 2. The issue that you got, I think it's fair to say, we didn't really hold the ball up against Woking, did we? We got the ball forward, and then we seemed to kind of create chances through pressing. But yeah, we weren't holding the ball up, were we?
No, we weren't. I mean, I know Wakeling caught your eye particularly, didn't he? You were just waving the flag for. We'll call him Luke Wakeling for the sake of it, shall we?
No, let's not do that, because that was silly and churlish of you, and he's quite clearly Jacob Wakeling.
Yeah, I'll take that one. That was my fault. Apologies. No, I think obviously Harry's the start, isn't he? I said Tommy. I mean, the only thing is, like, obviously everyone's seen his highlight reel last season. He looks good. I'm not too sure what the standard of the Scottish Championship is like. I'd imagine, obviously, you tend to see the same sort of teams in the Premiership, don't you, every year? So it's probably one of those ones where a team goes down, the team that goes up gets relegated the next year. The team went down the year before, goes back up again. And you're probably filled with a bit of fodder in between. Apologies to anyone listening if they support a Scottish Championship side. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure he's going to be a starter. Wakeling, I think, could be more of a starter, but again, it's his first pro season, really. He had 2 or 3 games for Barrow last year. So we are crying out for a recognised striker to start up with Macca. I mean, Tyree Simpson's name doesn't go away, does it? I know Ipswich have got a stupid valuation.
Look at Max is straight off the mute.
But that's
he's ready to go.
No one is going to pay that much for Tyree Simpson. So he's like, it'll get to a point where it's getting to the end of August and they just want him off the books, like
he's
the
got 1 year
wages.
contract left as well. So
that's what I mean. No one's. What was it they're asking for him? 600,000 was it, or
for an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old with like half a season's professional football under his belt with 1 year in his contract?
Yeah, he's coming home.
Well, Listen, I mean, look, there's a couple of things that I'll add, and I'm sure it's things that everyone else on Twitter and everyone else across the social space has noticed themselves. But it's very unusual for a player to play for a club the stature of Ipswich Town and be the age that Tyrese Simpson is, and not be trumpeting on your social media that you are a professional footballer, and B, a professional footballer that represents Ipswich Town. All right. Now, young Tyrese isn't doing either of that. It's fair to say, because there are some people that do like to repost stuff on socials, that Tyrese has kept in regular contact with Swindon Town fans, and has expressed emotion, is probably the best way to say it, in relation to him no longer wearing the red of Swindon Town. And to your point, Max, this is all conjecture at the end of the day, but to your point, Tyrese Simpson, there is no way that a lad of Tyrese Simpson's ability, off the back of half a season in League Two, where he was on a very, very sharp development curve. I mean, it's fair to say the Tyrese Simpson, Max, that left to return to Ipswich as a very, very different footballer to the Tyrese Simpson that we'll recall turning out against Peterborough in pre-season. I cannot see how £600,000 is being attached to Tyrese Simpson. Now, however, I think if I was in Clem's position and I was a wealthy business services company owner and had a few bob in the bank, and potentially I could get a Tyrese Simpson on a 3 to 4 year deal with a big fat minimum release clause in there, a nice sell-on fee for Ipswich to keep them sweet, and a nice big number 9 to slot in there alongside Harry McCurdy, where their partnership's already proven, and a nice, interesting individual to slot in alongside the likes of a Wakelin or an Oscar Massey or a Tommy Adeleye. I tell you what, I mean, for me, it feels like just sensible business. It really does. But I still think that Tyrese Simpson is still he's just not ready, I don't believe, to be kind of signing for. I think he's got to play football, right? Max, he's not
under 23 football will do him no good.
He's not going to go into League One and play football, mate, is he? Let's be honest. He's going to come.
No, probably not. Because you look at right. Take Josh Davison for example. How old is he? 22, going on 23, and you can't think that Wimbledon paid much for him. But again, I think Davison was a similar player. I don't think he's as good as Simpson, but I doubt they would have had that sort of price tag for Davison, and he's played a lot more football than Tyrese has as well. I think but we've got to play it smart, right? Because we know that Clem's a good businessman, and all he's got to do is wait it out. We've got striker options. I think we do need a striker, but I don't think we're in a position where we're desperate and we need to just sign some 33-year-old nomad who's been there and done it and might not play for the shit like Tyrese. Even Adeloye and Wakeling, I think they've come in and they've got a points prove, right? Coming in, it's Adeloye that's coming from Scotland. He's going to want to come into a proper league and show what he's got. Yeah. I think he's a good option to have. But I don't think he's the answer to. I wouldn't give him the number 9 shirt and go into the full season with him. Although people were saying that about Simpson last year, and look how it turned out. So
just
don't know, do you?
Just to add fuel to the fire of Ipswich's valuation, which is complete nonsense. If you go on to, obviously, I'm not saying this is gospel, and every club has their own valuation of their assets, which is fine. But Transfer Market have a rough estimate of how much a player is worth. Okay. So you've got players on the books at Ipswich, like Sonny Aluko and Freddie Ladapo. We'll use Freddie Ladapo as a striker, 29 years old, got 3 years in his contract left. That's a good age for a striker. He's an experienced striker, scored lots of goals. He's valued at £400,000. So where are they getting this $600,000 for Simpson with a year left in his contract, with 20 professional games under his belt and 9 goals? It's just it baffles me. It's honestly a joke. So.
I think, to be totally frank, though, boys, I think if you try and boil this all down, I don't think there's no rocket science behind this. I think with Ipswich, they're kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't on Tyrese Simpson, because they a player. I mean, again, I'm just being devil's advocate here, and it's not to say that this has happened, but a player that goes out on loan to a club, then returns to a club. Because fundamentally he wants to remain at Swindon, but he refuses to sign an extension to his contract, and his contract's going to run down. and obviously they've got an option on it, right? So they pull him back in, and then he just basically sits there. You know, he's now they'll say obviously he's developing, he's playing like development squad football and so on and so on and so forth. But they've got to be they've got to be careful, haven't they? They've got to protect their club and their club's interests. You know, they can't be letting lads go out on loan.
It damages their own position though with signing future young players.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're sort of damned if they do, damned if they don't, aren't they? Because that, you know, they don't want to end up losing a player like Tyree Simpson, you know, for literally for buttons. But then at the same time, you know, I mean, I guess what we're trying to say here is there's got to be a deal to be done that everybody happy. And we've only got to look at how we've just benefited from Scott Twine to see that.
I was just about to say the same there. Simpson scored more goals for us than Twine did.
Yeah.
And we got 300 grand for Twine. So playing devil's advocate, you could kind of see why they're thinking that. You know, he scored more goals, like I say, than Twine did for us. So you can kind of see where they're coming from. They're probably thinking, well, it's a bit of a gamble if we just get rid of him now for 50, 60 grand or whatever, or 100 grand.
Yeah.
You have to look at how much Twine's just gone for 12 months later.
Well,
so,
yeah. The thing is as well, Twine went for free, didn't he?
Dean, sorry, Joe. Dean,
Sorry.
a question for you, right? So we have seemingly just had a nice little splurge where we've obviously Jack Payne's not staying at the club, but we've been able to go out and bring in 3 or 4 other players, strengthen the squad overall, probably for the budget that we would have allocated to Jack Payne. If you were in Clem's shoes, would you break the bank, sort of respective to Swindon Town? Would you break the bank for Tyree Simpson, or would you sort of choose to have a run with the bodies you've already got through the door?
I'll definitely try and get someone else in. If we could do a deal for Simpson that didn't break the bank, then everyone will tell you, anyone who follows me on social media will tell you how much I love Tyree Simpson. I stuck up for him all season. But I do wonder at this level, there are strikers similar who you can get in for a lot cheaper. And I think it's worth noting, you know, if you look at Gladwin, I may be wrong here, but if you look at Gladwin, Williams and McCurdy, he's got 40 goals there between them still. So last season, close to surely McCurdy was 25 to maybe 35 goals between those 3 players last season. If you bring in another striker, just a big unit up front, who can get you 10 or 15, you kind of rely on McCurdy to have a similar season, but there's definitely goals, isn't there? So I would look at a big unit still. If I could get Tyrese, yeah, I would be getting him all day long, but not weirdly after what I've just said. I can see where Ipswich are coming from, but I wouldn't pay it. You know, that could have been the best form of his career that we ever see. Well, yeah, you don't know, do you? That could have been it.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I'm of the opinion that he's, you know, a splurge for me on Tyree Simpson would be 100 grand with a fat sell-on clause, and you know, I would be looking to tie him down to a 3.5, 4-year deal.
I'll do that all day long, yeah.
Because if you're Clem, that looks like good business. And I think that mitigates against risk in so many ways. But the one thing that I will say, however, is, you know, obviously the gaffer has mentioned, his name came up this week and he has mentioned about, you know, Tyree. I think I'm not quoting him verbatim here, but words to the effect of, he's a body we'd like to see back through the door, whether that be permanent or, you know, on loan. But he's not, whilst he's a big bustling number 9, he's a little bit of an anomaly, isn't he? Because he's not the experienced head that people are calling for. However, would you describe him as being experienced, Max, off the back of, you know, the goal haul he had last year and the fact that he proved that he can score in League Two?
Well, yeah, I think that he'll obviously have a relationship with Lindsay. He's got a relationship with many of the players here. But I think the key thing if we brought him back would be his link-up play with McCurdy. You know, instantly there's a partnership there that can work straight away, and you can get goals and assists out of both of them. I think, yeah, if there's a player you're going to break the bank for, it's going to be him. Like, I'd love to see him back. Absolutely love to see him back. I was gutted when he left. I think the way Ipswich handled it was pretty pathetic, to be honest, because they could have let him stay the rest of the season and triggered that extension anyway, but maybe had him come back in a better state of mind to go on and maybe play for Ipswich this year. But they just completely mismanaged the whole situation, haven't they?
Well, yeah. Well,
Well, I'd take it with Scott Twine, right? When we recalled him from Newport, we didn't just ditch him in the under-23s and force him to sign an extension. We brought him back, and he started the first game and scored straight away and came in and made contributions to the team.
Mm. Well,
that's
listen,
the sort of comparison I might make, right?
Max, I'll take it right the way back to my initial point. I think if you're Tyree Simpson at his age, if you feel like you're being treated well, if your head's in a good place, if you're at the place you want to be, you know, and if you've got previous of representing your footballing status on your social media as such, I think it's all over your banner, it's all over your bio, it's all over your profile pic, it's all over your social media interactions. I just think you're exuding it at his age. You know, I mean, to be a young pro his age playing for a massive club like that, if your head's in a good place, you know, you are singing from the rafters. So, you know, listen, there's so much in football happens, you know, based on what a player wants. I think if he is still steadfast that he wants away, you know, and he knows that, you know, he knows the club, he knows our fans. You know, I think we'll feel somewhat like a home from home to Tyree Simpson. You know, like I say, hopefully, I would like to think that a deal would need to be done. But listen, at the end of the day, we need to be very careful what we say. But we are just a fan Twitter space. At the end of the day, I'm not in the know in this respect. You know, I just hope for the sake of a young lad. And for the sake of his career and so forth, that both clubs can find some common ground if they're in conversations anyway. But listen, right, I tell you what, pretty much we've got right to the kind of tail end. But what I thought we'd do just ahead of Cardiff, just take a little take a view from each of you, Joe, Max, and Dean. Where's your head at so far in terms of a prediction? How are you feeling based on what you've seen so far, pre-season signings, everything we talked about tonight? You've heard what Wardy's got to say about behind the scenes and where he's at. Joe, I'll go with you first. Where do you think Town are going to be finishing in the coming season?
I genuinely think we're going to have a right good go at it this year. I think the atmosphere of the camp seems to be really, really sort of bubbly and enthusiastic. It sounds like Scott Lindsay, obviously, he knows a lot of the boys anyway, but they're all buying into what he's trying to preach to them. The signings, I think, have been really, really good. I mean, we've got, let's say, Angus MacDonald, who is a capable Championship centre-back, if not a good Championship centre-back, coming in at the sort of tail of the pre-season, but he's going to have the experience and know-how of fitting into a side. If we get a good striker in, genuinely, I think top three.
I'll take that. Max, where's your head at, buddy?
Yeah, I think you look at the quality we lost in players like in Payne and Egbo and Wallacott. I think we've just brought in the depth that we need, and I think that's going to make all the difference, especially towards the business end of the season in those tough winter fixtures where you're playing Saturday, Tuesday in hard conditions. I think we've corrected a lot of the not recruitment mistakes. Obviously, a lot of it was beyond our control last year, but we've corrected the squad in a way that now we don't have to run players into the ground. I think that's going to make a big difference. If we bring in a striker, we're going to be top side of the playoffs, challenger for automatics. I'm not really too sure on what. I haven't really paid too much attention to what other clubs are doing, but there are going to be. I mean, you've seen that Crawley are throwing money at it. Stockport are going to throw money at it. Bradford are probably going to throw money at it. You just got to hope that this data-driven recruiting we're doing is smarter than what those clubs are doing, right? So yeah, I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that's what I stole that from Rich he said that on LS Pod this week, but I think it perfectly describes how I feel going into this now.
Yeah, it's good footing to have. Where's your head at, Dean? As an experienced old head amongst us us young pups, he says. What are you thinking, Dean?
If we were to start the season tomorrow and finish with what we got, I'd say playoffs. I think we've got a good enough squad. Despite saying we got the goals, I do think we are missing something. There's just something. I don't know what it is, but I'd say playoffs at the moment. If, like you say, if we brought Tyree Simpson back and he was at the level he is when he left, then I would be looking at top three definitely. But yeah, playoffs, I'd be happy with that at the moment based on what we've got. like you say, we're going to lose players over the course of the season, aren't we? Williams, Khan could be off, if he plays for Gambia, we're going to lose players at key bits this season. So how good these fringe players are, we're going to find out, aren't we? So playoffs for me.
All right, which then leaves me to give you my take. Well, I'm going to say this. Don't you know, pump it up. The Reds are going up. Don't you know, pump it up. The Reds are going up. Right, I tell you why we're going up. I have been pretty. I was when the announcement first came out about the gaffer, and I've had this conversation with him directly, I'm pleased to say, because he's acutely aware that a lot of the Swindon Town fan base were, to quote him, underwhelmed by his appointment. But I also pointed out that underwhelmed feeling across the fan base seemed to be replaced with, certainly within the space of a week or two, with a kind of, well, all right, actually, well, this maybe does make some sense. The thing that has also benefited me personally, having been in and around the players, I've had some nice contact with them pre-season, but also at the back end of last year, and had a take from them in terms of how they feel about Scott Lindsay. There is a feeling that there is certainly a real affection and a real admiration and appreciation for what Scott Lindsay is all about as a gaffer, in terms of his values, in terms of his approach to football. And I think that obviously that's huge, because from the outset, you're going to have a squad that are just absolutely up for it. I've also been told that Scott really does put the effort in terms of the recruitment at the football club, in terms of playing a very, very active role in engaging with the players, and understanding and then presenting. I mean, he talked about this on the show that we did with him, about how, he actually sits down with players one-to-one, shows them clips of how they play, and then how Swindon are going to play and how they have played and how they fit in. And I really do think that personal relationship with players is going to be really, really important. I think the other thing that was really reflected back on me, because I had question marks in my mind about number twos becoming the number one, the main man. And that was one of my concerns. And certainly contact I've had with the players thus far is that really isn't necessarily going to be an issue with Scott Lindsay. I think the thing with Lindsay is that he has definitely got it about him to show his teeth. And I think, to be honest, as a coach, he's probably always been that man. And it's almost been explained to me that maybe Ben Chorley and indeed Scott Marshall were the individuals that were putting arms around people's shoulders. And Lindsay was much more of the kind of an enforcer, despite the fact he's so well regarded. So that's the first part of my argument as to why I think we're going up. I do think we've got the right man in the manager's office, and I think that really is key. I think the really exciting thing, and we talked about a lot of this tonight, I think if you look across the squad, I think you look in pretty much every single position, we've got real competition. And again, one of the nice things about kind of, playing this role that I do with the Sit On Broadbent Lounge, and it has afforded me a certain amount of contact in and around the squad, is that it's a healthy competition. This is a really, really good bunch of lads that are already kind of, from what I've seen, gelling into a really good group. I've not seen any cliques at all. I've seen literally members of the squad interacting with other members of the squad. I've watched them from afar, and I've actually stood in amongst them, and they all speak so highly of each other, and that's really, really positive. And I do think that the keep, just my final point, the keeping of the spine of the squad from last season. I think if you look in the goalkeeping department, let's say, for example, we start the season with Wardy as number one. We've got a cracking goalkeeper between the sticks. I think even before we've recruited at centre-back, with the re-signing of Matt Bowdery at centre-back was absolutely critical. And I think if he carries that form from last season into next season, he's going to be brilliant. And then ahead of him, obviously, you've got Reedy. Now, Reedy is probably the best midfielder in that division, and by a mile for me, if I'm going to be really honest. And then ahead of him, you got Johnny Williams, not being funny, a Welsh international. And yeah, there were some detractors at points last season, blah, blah, blah. But Johnny Williams is still Johnny Williams. And then up top, you got Harry McCurdy. Now, and we've recruited around them. There's not many teams at this level that have got that quality of a spine to build from. I think we've got experience in the right areas now. I think some of the recruitment's been spot on. I think McDonald is going to prove to be an absolutely brilliant signing. I do think Wardy's got his work cut out. What I've seen from Sol Bryn pre-season, I think he's outstanding. I think Kieran Brennan looks like a real super centre-back, and Sheffield Wednesday fans will tell you that. Tom Clayton looks like a real baller. Tom Clayton has got pedigree. You know, Liverpool under-23 captain, Scotland under-21 international, real pedigree. You know, Cian Harries, Welsh under-21 international, sort of lost his way a little bit at Rovers, but joined Rovers from Swansea very much with his tail up, and it was like his big move. Now, moving to Swindon, that's a big move for him. So he's going to be champing at the bit to get in the side. And then, like I said, we've got lads like Ronan Darcy. I mean, Ellis Iandolo is going to be absolutely gagging to get, you know, back in top form, left centre midfield. Let's go for it. You know, Jordan Lydon come back in October. If he can come back and get his fitness on, wow, our midfield is embarrassingly good. All we're missing for me to actually stand there and say, I think we're going to have a run at actually winning the bloody league this year, is that number 9. But I still think we're going to start the season with Jacob Wakely and Harry McCurdy up top, worst case scenario. And that's not a bad worst case scenario. And those two boys are going to score goals. So, yeah, my towel is very, very much up. But so listen, I mean, all that is really left to be said tonight. We've had all the predictions from the guys. We've had Lewis Ward's input. We've had various questions that have been flashed in across the listener base tonight. But we're just going to give you a little bit of insight in relation to what's going to be happening with the Tom Broadbent Lounge on Saturday match days at the County Ground moving forward. So starting on Saturday against Cardiff, appreciate it's a slightly earlier kickoff. But between sort of 9:30 and 10 o'clock, we are going to be kicking off with our very first pre and post match Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge match day coverage. We are going to be taking questions from you guys. We're going to be live from the Legends Lounge, where we've got a bespoke area of the Legends Lounge put aside for us. We're going to be working the Legends Lounge, talking to all of you guys. We're going to be taking calls live. We're going to have special guests coming in. We'll have people coming in from the dressing room. We'll have people coming in from management. And that's going to be pre and post game. But you lucky devils, on Saturday, you've also got another dose of alternative commentary from the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge in a way that only the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge can do. So I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoyed Woking, expect much of the same. And poor old Johnny Leafield and Andrew Hawes will be earplugs in, no doubt, after Joe and my last display. But we look forward, hopefully, to you all tuning in and being part of the show. I think we've said before, really, this show lives and dies on its interaction from you guys. So please do flood your questions in. We will be, certainly, I can assure you that we will be speaking to Rob Angus on Saturday. And Rob is content to answer any questions that you would like fired in at him. So please send them over to either myself or to the Sir Tom Broadbent Lounge account. And I will make sure that we ask Rob any questions before the game. But aside from that, I mean, we'll just wrap things up. Joe, Max, Dean, thank you ever so much. We thank Darren Ward, we thank Lewis Ward, showing my age. We thank Lewis Ward for Lewis's contribution. I'm delighted that Lewis is accepting the invite to come back on again. I thank you all for listening in. Looking forward to catching up with you all on Saturday. But for now, just to wrap up by saying Tom Broadbent Lounge is an independent Swindon Town fan Twitter space produced by the fans for the fans. It does not represent the opinions of Swindon Town Football Club or Sir Tom Broadbent himself. I look forward to catching up with you guys again on Saturday. Thanks very much.